Okay, so today we're going to be learning how to sharpen our pencil for drawing purposes. So what you're probably used to already just from school is a basic pencil and pencil sharpener setup. Kind of like this. I've got a little handheld pencil sharpener, and I've got my pencil that I used with the sharpener, and you can kind of see the point. It's a really specific point, one that you're probably very used to. But we're going to put that aside and see some of the benefits of not using just a standard pencil sharpener and what that can do for us. So we're going to need a few things. Most of these things are in your materials list. In fact, all of them are. So I've got my little sandpaper pad made by Stadler here. I've got my box cutter. I've got one from Cobalt. Really, the brands don't matter as long as you have something that is comparable. And when it comes to this stuff, it's really your preference. So you might find a knife or a pad or a material that works better for you. That's fine. These are really just the basics. So I've got my Cobalt box cutter. I've got a new blade on it. They look like this. You've seen them before. A fresh blade is really important. So make sure that you switch out the blade when it gets dull. I primarily just use this box cutter for one purpose, and that is for sharpening pencils. So I keep it really well controlled. I don't really do anything else with it so that I always have a nice clean cut. And then we're also going to be using a pencil. So you all got a pack of Blick Studio pencils. I'm not going to use the 2H. I'm going to use a 3B here. This one's a Stadler, but your Blick pencils are fine. Again, the brand doesn't really matter. But I'm going to take the original edge from the sharpener that I used. That was a set edge. And I'm going to change that up a little bit by using my box cutter and my sanding pad. So when you go to do this, I'm doing this on a surface. I will have to kind of clean this up later. I'm going to have shavings and graphite dust all over the surface that I'm carving my pencil onto. So make sure to have something handy to clean it up. If you don't clean it up well enough, when you go to maybe do a drawing or work on that surface, you will get graphite dust onto your hands, and that will transfer to other surfaces. So what I'm going to do, now that I've got these set up, is I'm going to hold my pencil comfortably with a good grip so that I have full control over it. It's not going anywhere. And I like to kind of hold it in between my thumb and my pointer finger in my left hand. And it's mostly because I'm dominant with my right. So because I'm dominant with my right, I want to use my right hand for having control over my box cutter, because I will have more control with my right hand. My left hand is really to keep it steady, but also to roll it. So while I'm cutting, I'm going to be constantly rolling my pencil as I make cuts into it to have a uniform carving throughout. So let's go ahead and kind of get going with that. So when I've got the knife out, I've got it ready to go. I'm holding my pencil correctly. I'm holding my knife full in my hands. What I want to do is basically position my blade at the edge of the pencil here, probably about ½ an inch away from the tip. I can go longer depending on how long I want my lead to be, how much lead I want exposed. That's up to you. Also, what's important is the angle of your blade to your pencil. So if we're looking at this right now, I've got the blade in relationship to my pencil at about a 90-degree angle. Now, obviously, that's not going to work for this. If I go to try to carve this thing out, I'm going to make a big mess. Same thing if I do it at maybe a 45-degree angle. That's a little bit better. I can make strokes with it, but what tends to happen is I take a lot of material off and I have less control over how much material comes off in that one moment, that one swipe. It's also genuinely a little bit harder to make that mark. So what I usually like to do is have my blade at a much more shallow angle, something between 10 and 15 degrees. So I'm really just kind of like brushing the surface of it. I also don't put a lot of pressure into my blade. The more pressure that you put into the blade, the more likely you are to chip into the lead or take big chunks out of your pencil. So we want to keep ourselves from doing that. That's the importance of a sharp blade. The sharper your blade is, the easier it will be for you to move your blade across the surface of your pencil, and the less likely you are of messing that up and taking big chunks out. So I'm just going to go ahead and go right into it. So what I'm doing is I'm making quick, controlled cuts while I'm rolling my pencil. And it's not a race. I could even kind of go back in a different direction. It's not a race. I don't want to do this quickly. I want to do this slow and controlled. You can see right now I'm slowly, ever so slowly, I'm exposing the lead shaft. And that's it. Now I've got a nice uniform piece of lead kind of jutting out of my wooden pencil body. But it's not quite sharp, so I'm not going to sharpen the graphite with my blade. You can if you want to, but it's really difficult. I'm much more likely to chip the graphite or break it off entirely. So to sharpen it, that's where your sandpaper pad comes in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to have my pad on a flat surface. I'm going to take my pencil in my right hand and I'm just going to run it over my pad, constantly turning it until I sharpen up the tip. And there you have it. So now I've got a nice controlled end here. Now the same thing, much like I was doing it with the box cutter, if I hold my pencil at different angles on my sandpaper pad, I will get different points. So different lengths of my point, different widths of my point. That's all controlled by the angle at which I sand the edge. So that's something you can play with. Mess with that, see the different points you might like, different angles you might want to try to get different variations of your graphite. So why is this good? Why is this maybe a little bit more interesting or more fun to use than a traditional tip? Well, a couple reasons. One, like most pencils, the pain of a pencil encased in wood as compared to a mechanical pencil is that it's really hard to do a continual drawing with a wooden pencil because you have to keep sharpening it. Mechanical pencils, you don't have to do that. You can just keep pressing the end and extending the tip. But there's no real variation of line. So if I'm making a mark with my mechanical pencil, it's the same 0.5 line, and it will always be the same 0.5 line. If I make marks using the pencil that I've just carved out with a much longer tip, that tip will last over a longer period of time, and I can go through different line weights. So I can go from a thin line to a thick line to a thin line again, all within the same movement. So that's the benefit. Okay, that's all that I have for you. Be safe, follow the instructions closely and try this at home. See what you can do. It's gonna be a little frustrating at times. That's okay, you might break a few pencils. Don't sweat it too much. Just give it a shot and do your best. See what you can come up with. Good luck.